All right, welcome to Talking Ass. This was going to be a fun one today. Just some admin first before we go into the mailbox section of this episode. It's recently come to my attention that apparently the name of the show, the Talking Ass, that apparently in some parts of the English-speaking world, ass is not a donkey, but something vulgar, something filthy. And as you all well know, that I would never tolerate any kind of filth or blasphemy, especially not in public. So I hope we can all be adults about this and move on. So today we're going to move to a fun email communication that came in from my legal advisor, actually. And this will serve as the public service announcement as well, because this is about a taxi scammer in Helsinki, Finland. So if you're ever visiting, be aware of someone called Rikan Taxi. And I'm going to read out a phone number, and I would like creative ideas of how to deal with this scammer. Apparently this guy has a minimum charge that it's 25 euros to just sit down in the taxi. And they were going a short distance, and the guy said there's a minimum charge. So if hypothetically you were to do anything, I don't officially support any action on this, but there are, I've heard, websites where you can upload the phone numbers of known scammers, and some kind of software will block their phone lines with spam calls. Maybe that's something you could do if you were so inclined. 358, the area code for Finland, 451620171. And I heard a recording of a prank call that my legal advisor and his friend made to this guy after they got scammed. And once the guy figured out that it was a prank call, this is a real sociopath. He started shouting at them about wanting to tickle their mother's buttholes. Yeah. This is a legit sociopath. So send in any other creative ideas that you might have for dealing with this guy. And we also have an email here from Gary. Gary's one of our money guys in the Cayman Islands. And Gary's not a nice guy, but we have to tolerate him, and he's getting pretty itchy about the lack of engagement on this channel, and he's pressuring me to be more like Joe Rogan, and also to create engagement among our female listeners. He wants me to be more like Oprah. So
is it possible to be more like Oprah in your
well,
shoes?
that's my assistant Sylvia there, and Sylvia's asking if I could be more like Oprah. I think there are certain physical requirements that I don't quite meet. There are certain significant differences between us, but I think I can run a book club. I'll commit to a book club, and then when it comes to being more like Joe Rogan, I mean, I can talk about moose meat, aliens, pyramids. Woody Harrelson shot JFK. That's something Joe Rogan would say, right?
You have a lot of facts about Rogan.
It's not Joe Rodent, it's Joe Rogan. Yeah. But we'll go with Woody Harrelson shot JFK. That's my public service announcement. And government, fake news. COVID, fake news. Testosterone, should eat a lot of it. And yeah, I hope you're happy now, Gary. You fuck. So let's move on to something fun called Pottery Corner. I was thinking this is gonna be a regular piece of our programming, where our assistant Sylvia is gonna come back regularly for a pottery update and tell us what's going on in the pottery world. But we'll start with some basic questions just to introduce the world of pottery. So tell people, why should they choose this as a hobby? Why should they try it? What's nice about potting?
It is very good for taking yourself out of your head and into doing something physical, literally playing with mud. Secondly, you're a learner. I'm definitely still a learner. I've done it for 5 years. But you're a learner even when you've done it for decades. You just keep exploring, and people can take all sorts of different avenues, like hand building or using the wheel. And then there's lots of funky approaches, like raku is one where you put it in a box so it sort of sets alight and leaves lovely marks. And then the other thing that is really interesting is that people are now going quite wholesome in, it's one word for it. They're digging up wild clay and then purifying that and making that into clay they use to make pottery with.
This sounds like some hipster modern shit. What about like what's the, you know, we have a conservative listenership. What's the conservative way of starting with pottery? I don't want any like wild vegan pottery. Just give me the meat eaters pottery.
Well, obviously, like everyone wants that ghost film moment, don't they? Are you aware of that?
No, not familiar.
That's weird. Okay, Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore, or Demi Moore. I think you need to watch that, and then we'll continue that.
Is that like a scene where it's where the potting and the clay is sort of a big sexual innuendo or like a metaphor, and it's all like all sensual the way they do it?
Yeah. So I could tell it. So number one, messy. Number two, he's like behind her, cupping her hands on the wheel, cupping the pot. All very. What's a classic scene? So there's that aspect, but generally you can go and do like a 30 quid workshop where you make your own mug or pot, and it's pretty achievable.
Okay, so how much of your entrance into this was that scene in this film when you wanted it to be all sensual and Patrick Swayze to run into the scene, or maybe the guy from the Outdoor Boys YouTube channel, because that's been the bow of your dreams?
I can't control what happens in my dreams, for one. Well, I still don't really talk to people at the studio, so no. I prefer to do solo potting.
So not only not a place to meet anyone romantically, but not a place to meet anyone, is what you're saying. This is about self-play with clay, which is another DVD I've owned before. By the way, have they in Japan made this all weird? Like, can you buy like ceramic sex toys in a vending machine in Japan?
Probably, but I must say, when I used to play with air drying clay, a go-to item to make was the penis, because it's literally the shape of your. So you're using your hands when you make clay. It comes together very quickly.
Well, I suppose depends how quickly it comes together. Depends on the size of the penis you're making.
They're usually the size of like.
And how many details are in it?
How many details do you want?
No, I mean like people have like birthmarks or moles or something. Is that a more advanced stage of pottery?
I never got to the point where I like coloured it in or anything. It just had like a wee hole, and it had testicles.
I can't believe we got our assistant Sylvia to say testicles on the air. This is already a success. So, what's the most complex item you've made?
I'm not sure about the most complex one, but
what's the one you're proudest of?
Okay, so number one, a velociraptor. So that's my perfect one, because his tail, because the clay was like wet and drying, the tail dipped down onto the to the table or whatever, and that actually held it up as this huge 3D velociraptor, like 10 inches tall, and it just came out perfect, because when you're dealing with pottery it can go wrong at a number of stages, so that was a nice result anyway.
So what skills were useful in making the velociraptor that you learned in the workshop where you made all the penises, other than obviously the noise they make?
I didn't need a workshop for the penis making. That was just me in like my patio. They teach on the wheel mainly at the workshops and stuff, or they do like cups and saucers, practical items. They would normally do a workshop where you make practical items like a bowl or a plate or a mug or a flower pot. So the hand build stuff is more like me experimenting, and the reason I got into that is because I got so obsessed with pottery that I knew I could do that in my tiny flat, like hand build something at home and then take it in.
So this is a hobby that people can very much do at home. You don't need the big facilities with the dreidel. What's the dreidel called again?
The pottery wheel.
Yeah, the big dreidel.
And the kiln.
So if you do it at home, you can then go and just pay people for the use of an oven What's the oven called?
Kiln.
Yeah.
You could do that, yeah. You could. Easy also to get the air drying one, like those kits. Sculpt is one. And you can get the clay and the tools and the paint. But it does like have a different consistency. It would be nicer to do the real stuff.
All right. And finally, if you could commit to a long-term like project that we can track the progress on here on the podcast, and you can come in on the Pottery Corner in the future, what would you like to make? And then you could come in and tell us whether you messed it up and have to start again, or whether it's going well.
Yeah, so at the moment I can only do pots to about 6 inches high, and then it all goes wrong. So something bigger than that would be a huge
I hope you didn't
thing.
have that problem with the penises.
No, they were I probably kept it to that maximum, to be honest.
Realistic.
Yeah. But then so on the wheel up to about 6 inches. But I would say I've got quite a few options for my inspiration. I'd say more pottery animals, to be honest, and taller vases because they're really hard.
All right, so we'll let us know in the next corner what kind of animals and whether you progressed past 6 inches, because that's just the tip of the iceberg, as they say. I wanted to finish with a little, since Parent Corner is the probably trademark, we'll go with Parent Nook. You have any fun anecdotes that come quickly to mind about your child?
My small fry.
I can take this one, no problem. So I'll tell you a story about how my son was learning about genders. He was playing with a sort of figurine that was clearly male, and then a doll that was like a girl, and he was looking at them, and I mean he's under 2 years old, and he was looking at them, and he clearly saw the difference. He went like, looked to the left at the girl doll, looked to the right at the boy, and he was trying to figure it out, and he started looking at me, and I told him, yeah, you got a boy and a girl there, right? And don't get all modern at me, everyone. It might become a more complex conversation one day, that whole thing, but he was observing a difference, so I said, yeah, you got a boy and a girl there, right? And then he pointed correctly at the boy and said, boy, and then he said, girl. And then he took the girl doll and he shoved it deep like into the shelf under the TV. And he said, girl, go on shelf. So yeah, that's the kind of values we have around the house.
No.
What do you know, Sylvia? We're not in the same house.
No.
Yeah. All right, thank you, everyone. You got a public service announcement for the end?
Yeah, so get away from your brain for a while and go and do pottery.
That's fantastic, and I can vouch for that. I've done it, and it's surprisingly super fun. And I'll say the greatest public service you can do is to stay tuned for a full-length episode at the end of the week.